Hello and welcome to the Single Man Chef. This is the first of a number of videos that I'm going to be putting up on YouTube about you and cooking. Now, who are you? Well, if you're anything like the guy I was 20 years ago, you didn't really think about cooking as something that you'd ever particularly wanted to do, but then one day you got divorced, and all of a sudden the person who used to cook for you wasn't there anymore. And if you called her up to come over and cook you a meal, well, her response was less than enthusiastic. So what were you surviving on? Well, if you were anything like me, those little Michelina's frozen dinners, you know, the tiny ones that wouldn't really feed a 10-year-old, well, I was eating those. As a result, I lost tons of weight, which was great, but they weren't very nourishing. And after a while, I got real sick of them. So then I started to eat fast food instead, and my weight started going in completely the opposite direction. But there's only so many Whopper combos you can eat before you get sick of that too. So what do? You have to learn how to cook. And that's what this is really all about. Now, 20 years have gone by. I'm not a single guy anymore. I'm married with 2 kids. But again, I have to cook now, don't I? Because I have to feed those kids something. And if I feed them nothing but frozen dinners and fast food, you should be calling social services on me, shouldn't you? So I can't avoid cooking, which is good because I love cooking now. Out of necessity, I've gained a hobby. Cooking has become something that I love. And maybe, even though you might think right now that that's not you, you might wind up loving it too. So who isn't this video series for? Well, it's not for people who know how to cook but don't enjoy it. For you, I don't know. It's like people who say, I don't like sex. I don't know what to say to you, right? You're not on my planet, so go away. People who are always going to be taken care of and know that they always will be taken care of when it comes to food. Well, good for you. I think you're missing out, right? Cooking is one of the great pleasures of life, I think. But you know what? If that's your situation, good for you. This isn't for you. And if you just plain have no interest in food, there are people in this life, obviously I'm not one of them, but there are people who view food simply as fuel. And if you're that kind of person, then who cares what you eat, right? You could eat gruel all day long. I couldn't, but if that's you, more power to you. There's more food for the rest of us. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be doing a series of videos that basically teach you how to cook the way I learned how to cook, starting from the very basic things that everybody should know how to do. Spaghetti, a steak, a hamburger, which everybody thinks they know how to do, but most people don't. Put something in the oven and roast it. I used to be terrified of the oven. Now I love it. It's great. It's hands-off, cruise control cooking. So you're going to learn how to do that too. And while we're at it, I teach you a little bit about wine. Now, who am I to teach you any of this stuff? Well, I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional chef. I never have been. I spent one day in a professional kitchen when I was 16, and I ran away screaming. It was enough to convince me that there was no way in hell I was ever going to cook for a living. Now, since I've become a fairly passable chef, my wife has suggested to me on more than one occasion that, you know, maybe you should open a restaurant. And to me, it always seems like a good idea for about 30 seconds. And then I realized that that's a perfect way to convert something I love into something I hate, and I just have to do. So I'm not that guy. I have no professional training. I have no aspirations to be a professional chef. That's not me. All I want to do is cook for my family and my friends, and if thanks to YouTube, I can share a little bit of information with people I don't know, well, so much the better. So basically, at the age of 50, I'm looking back on 20 years of cooking for myself. Since I learned that I had no alternative, I started off with very simple things. What did I start off with? Well, I started off with a can of sauce and a box of noodles. And that's what I started off with. And I thought, well, that's pretty basic. I can do that, right? No, I couldn't do that. You probably heard it said about a lot of people, maybe even including yourself, he couldn't boil water. Well, I couldn't boil water. I could put the noodles in the water, but I didn't know what the hell to do with them. I'd put them in there before the water had boiled. So all I was left with was a soggy, congealed mess. I'd leave them in there too long after the water had boiled. So I came out with overcooked, soggy noodles again. I'd pour a cold can of sauce onto a hot bed of noodles, and then I'd wonder why it tasted like crap. And then I'd try and cover it all up with a bunch of dry, store-bought, so-called Parmesan cheese. All wrong. So if you think that starting off just by cooking your own spaghetti is going to be easy, it's not. But it can be if you just know a couple of things. A couple of things that I had to learn through trial and error, because when I was trying to learn how to cook, food TV wasn't a thing yet, right? This was pre-Anthony Bourdain, right? Only a few years, but it was pre-Anthony Bourdain. So now, thanks to people like Tony, a lot more of us are taking an interest in what we eat and deciding that we can actually cook that too. So I'm going to be referencing some of my influences, people like him, people like Jamie Oliver, who have made it their mission to teach those of us who don't think we can cook that we actually can. It's not rocket science. And I truly believe that now. I'm living proof of it, and I want to share that with you. So that's my preamble. My next video is going to be about the sort of tools